My junior season, I didn't play because my mother was diagnosed with breast cancer and eventually passed away from breast cancer. So I didn't play my junior year. After high school, I kind of gave basketball up. Going through that situation, just like it was rough with my brother and my sister, and kind of having to help around at the house. So it was difficult. I didn't really think about playing until later on that year. I was enrolled at Macomb Community College, and I figured I would give it a chance again.
When I showed up inside the probation officer's office, she was really, she was the same. She acted normal, and she got quiet for a second, and she didn't say anything. She just kept typing, and I was getting nervous. Like she was like just sitting there, and it was like 5 minutes went by, and I heard keys jingling, and at that time I just knew it. I looked up, and it was 2 cops right there, and they were like, "Are you Paul Stanke?" And I was like, "Yep," and he was like, "You're under arrest." And I just looked at her, and I remember looking at her in her eyes, and she just shook her head, and she's like, "Why'd you do it again? Like, what's wrong with you?" I never stayed in one place.
As far as being a college student and being away from home for the first time, and in that process of being away, I kind of got in trouble. That's when I got in trouble.
My dad has always been a big guy on supporting yourself.
Like they just hear the bad. It still doesn't matter. All they hear is prison or a black guy.
We used to always like daydream about playing college basketball together. And those guys in there used to think we were crazy. Like they used to think like, you guys are just like everyone else.
These moments, you're better than me at talking. The whole talking thing, you about to get up here. You about to get up here like, yes, and we were like, yeah, let's do it. Yeah, you're gonna articulate everything better. You know what I was thinking about? I was just like, I'm just not about to do it like I did in the national tournament when we did the interview. I was like, yes. Are you gonna win? Yes.
The best thing to do is like talk like you're just talking to me.
Well, I was staying in my own apartment at the time when I was at Macomb, and my things got kind of rough. Not just for me, but for my roommate as well. His parents, his dad had a heart attack, and his mom was suffering from some like just kidney issues, and we got behind on the rent, and it just a poor decision. It led to a poor decision, which we ended up committing a robbery and ended up serving 3 years in prison for it. So I did a few months in Jackson, and then I ended up getting sent up north to Ojibwe Correctional Facility for the majority of my time in prison, majority of the 3 years.
This man back here is a rapist, he's a beast, he's a killer, he's a this, he's a that. I felt like I didn't do anything wrong. I was like, I do what every other kid does, what every other senior does. I just could not get that out of my head. Like, why am I looked at as this animal, as this crazy person? Somebody came up to my job and was freaking out and was like, Paul, he's like, the school cop's looking for you. I thought about it and I was like, oh my God, my heart dropped. Like, I was like, oh my God. Like, I thought like she's 15, like she's underage and she told. And that was my first thought. And I told my boss and I left work and I'm just like losing, I don't know what to do. And it's like, it just felt like my life was just spiraling. Like I had no idea what was going on. Like I couldn't control anything. When I showed up inside the probation officer's office, she was really, she was the same. She acted normal. I looked up and it was 2 cops right there. And they were like, "Are you Paul Stanke?" And I was like, "Yep." And he was like, "You're under arrest." And I just looked at her and I remember looking at her in her eyes and she just shook her head and she's like, "Why'd you do it again? Like, what's wrong with you?" And I was just like, I didn't say anything. I just sat there and I didn't even have no emotion. Like I didn't cry. I was just like, I messed up. Like it's over. I was at a real prison. Like, this was as real as it gets. Like, people were stabbing each other. There was people dying. You know, there was fights every day. You know, so I was just overwhelmed. You know, I tried to play basketball, it didn't work out. I was too little. You know, I couldn't get on the court. I couldn't get next. Even if I had next, I didn't have next. You know, it'd be like, I got next, and they'd be like, no, you don't. And I'd be like, all right, well, I got next after that. And then and then the next guy would come and be like, who's got next? And be like, the white boy. And he'd be like, no, he doesn't. I got next. And, you know, it was just frustrating, you know. I hadn't really fought anybody. I kind of just got beat up, smacked, pushed, punk mugged. You know, I hadn't done anything. This guy that was from Flint was supposed to be this big gangster, you know, this big tough guy. And he stole like $30 from me, you know, and like stuff. I cried because I was like, I have to fight him. And I was so scared because I was like, I've had enough. I can't eat. I can't, you know, people are gonna, if I let this guy take my stuff, I'm not gonna be able to live here. They're gonna just keep stealing my stuff. They're gonna smell weakness. So E came in, and long story short, he came in. As soon as he came around the corner, I just fired on him. And I was like, I blacked out. It was like all those losses I had took, all that, you know, that hatred that I had took towards me, I just let it out on him. One of the guys that I had knew who didn't have any respect for me, he used to always like make fun of me and push me and shit. You know, he had like all this newfound respect. Like he was like, oh, there goes Mayweather. He was like saying stuff, laughing, and he was like, be like, fight night, there he goes.
When I first got there, it was just a wild experience. It was just like, my whole thought process of being there was just to survive, you know, just to get back to my family and, you know, everybody who's waiting on me. A lot of people ask me like, what did I do? And I was like, listen, I'm not really a criminal. You know, I made a terrible decision. Like, all I do, I just play basketball. That's all I do. And everybody was curious to see if I really could play basketball, because I never, you know, pretended to be anything that I wasn't. I just told them all the time, like, I just play basketball. I made a mistake. I just want to do my time and go home.
So I went to hoop, and there was a 3-on-3 thing, and it was a really good players. And at this time, I was playing with all the good players. I had a lot of respect. I
finally just ended up giving in and just playing with a few guys who I knew that locked in the same area as me.
And I picked up a guy, and then he said, you know, pick my homeboy Sean up. And I was like, I looked at him, and I'll never forget, I looked at him, and he had on like a full blue suit that they give you with the state shoes, which are like dress shoes. And he had on like pajamas that were like over his shirt and then like over his pants. They were coming out. And he didn't have his hair cut. And I'm just looking at him, and I looked at Will, and I'm like, all right, you know, come on, man. I'll never forget the very first play. You know, AK had crossed Sean over and went to the hole and went to lay it up. And Sean hawked him down and just pinned the ball like on the top of the square. And everyone was like, you know, just what the hell? He was gifted. Like, he wasn't just a hooper. He could play for real.
Even at that time, I still was like skeptical about everybody, you know, so it was just like, after I played, I still just left.
I asked him if he wanted to, I started going up to the unit and, you know, getting him out of there, and he was quiet, you know, he saved himself, he didn't really come out.
He actually initiated the friendship because I'm just one of the people that I won't say much.
So I had to like get him to come play, like he didn't really want to play. He'd play with me.
And he was just like, what's up, bro? Like, let's hoop, let's work out, let's do this, let's do that. And it was just like, it was cool because, I mean, I kind of needed a friend in that situation who was pretty much thinking the same way I was thinking, which was to get out of there.
He wanted to work out, and I wanted to get better at basketball, so we kind of just did, you know, I worked out with him, and he helped me with basketball. And
every day, Paul would ask me, yo, you think I can play college basketball? You think I can play college basketball? And I would be like, I would tell him like, yes, man, like you could play. And he would be like, it seemed like he would, when I would tell him he would believe it for that moment. And then it's like, it would probably just leave his head afterwards, because he would ask me so much, like every day, like, do you think I can play college basketball? I'm like, yes, you can. He's like, but I'm short. And I'm like, bro, you all right? I get released first. It's like, you would think like 3 years doesn't change much, but my brother was he was a sophomore in high school when I got locked up. When I came home, he was 19 years old, driving a car. You know, my little sister couldn't read a book. She was 4 years old. She was like 7. I came home, she's 10, she's writing, reading. But, you know, the small things we all, you know, take for granted is what I realized like, more important than a lot of other things.
So when I got out, and I completely forgot about basketball, and I just completely just left that alone. I had this dream of like playing college basketball, and I was just like, I'm not gonna do it. I'm 26. I mean, I was 24. I'm 24 years old. I need a job. I need to find a wife. I need to get a kid. I'm thinking I'm behind. A month after I was out, I got a factory job. I started working in the factory all summer, got my own place, got my own car. And I went on Facebook one day. I don't know what made me do it, but I looked for Sean. I kept thinking about every now and then I'd be working and I'd be like, damn, I wonder what Sean's doing,
Paul got in contact with me.
So I gave him my number and I told him to call me. So he called me, and when he found out who it was, he just went crazy. Like it was like a reunion. Like it was like, oh, we got to see each other. We got to figure this out. So we met up and we hung out, and he told me like, so what's up? Are you gonna try to hoop or what? We just catching up, and he ended up getting a scholarship at Wayne County. And when he got it, it kind of gave me a little hope. I was like, man, maybe I can play. Like he made it, maybe I can play.
I talked to Paul about playing. Like, would you want to play? He was like, yeah. He's ready. So I called the assistant coach at the time, and I told him, I said, hey, I got this white boy. All you want to do is rebound and set picks, set hard picks. I say, just who we need. And they talked about it or whatever, and they were just like, okay, have him come down to one of the games and come to the workouts and everything like that.
I went to the Saint and I got a scholarship, and and I took that scholarship and I went straight to my dad, and I made a copy of it and I put it on his desk, and I just left. I just left his house. I put it in there and I said, he can read that, and he got it, and he was happy or whatever, and I didn't care what kind of reaction I got from him. I just wanted to show him like, yeah, I made it playing basketball. I'm going to school because of basketball.
Leading up, starting that year was like probably one of the craziest years of our life. Okay, Paul was staying at Ypsilanti still, and he was working at this factory, but he couldn't continue working at the factory because he's playing basketball and going to school in Detroit, which was a 45-minute drive every single day. So he had to quit his job.
Sean was going through a lot of stuff, and I couldn't wait to help.
Me and my brother was living in the car, completely homeless. Our only option was to go out to Ypsi with Paul, and we commuted back and forth with Paul from Ypsi for like that entire year. And it was like the craziest time of our life, but it was the best time too. It was a lot of nights we didn't eat or ate hot and ready's between three people.
But we made it work. We commuted every day. There was times when I broke down in practice, just started crying like in the middle of practice because of how broke we were. Like we didn't even have enough gas to get home one day.
The first season was rocky. We had a good year, but we didn't get to accomplish things that we could because we weren't a complete team. We didn't really care about each other that much that year.
But that second season was like when we got everything together. We got focused.
Everyone's role increased from the year before. I became captain of the team. Paul became somewhat of a leader.
And we were like, we're gonna do this. We're gonna make a run at this. Like I was settled. There was no more like broke. I had a job. I had worked all summer. We had our financial aid all set. So we were just ready. There's no distractions. And we had a season of our lives. We went 10-0 in the conference to start the season out. And we were just everywhere.
We won the Eastern Conference Championship.
We beat Mott. We beat the OCC. We beat the powerhouses. And we just kind of hit the league by storm.
We won the State of Michigan Championship of junior colleges.
We ended up making it to the national tournament.
It was a great year. It was a great year.
We were on such a high that we all thought, like, if we make it to the tournament, everyone's going to get a scholarship. Like, everyone's going to have all these offers, and we're just going to be able to pick where we want to go. And it wasn't like that. It was kind of demoralizing because we had this high of like we were all going to just have all these options, and it just kept dropping off. And it was weird because with me and Sean, it's like once they found out we went to prison, it was like half the schools were gone. It was just one by one, each school would just disappear. And especially for me because of my case, mine was different than Sean's. Mine was, considered, a sexual crime. So it's like looked at as more heinous. So a lot of schools really shied away from that. I had a visit to Purdue-Calumet. And when I went to Purdue-Calumet, they had offered me $17,000 to go there, which I needed to pay like $19,000 for out of state. And so basically I had a full ride almost. And I was ready. Like I wanted to sign that day. And I'll never forget, I got a call from the head coach a week later, and he told me that they had to take the scholarship away, that they couldn't offer it to me because the athletic director didn't want to sign off on it. And that, at that moment, like I thought, like I had took a turn for the worst. I got a call from Langley, and we had about an hour conversation, and basically he just told me he wanted me. And I was like, it was just like a godsend. Like, it was like God calling me out of nowhere, like saying, look, this is not over. I didn't bring you this far to drop you off. And you're not going to go back and do the same shit you did to go to prison. You know, Sean was a little different. You know, he had Madonna was really, you know, interested in him, and they had a lot more money to offer. So he kind of made the best decision for him. And we talked about it, you know, and the best decision was to do what's best for him and me do what's best for me. So he did what he thought was best, and I did, and we went our way. So I committed to U of M Dearborn. I felt motivated because I wanted to play for Langley because he gave me a chance. You know, these guys, all these coaches, I had like 12 offers and they all disappeared. And it made me mad again. You know, I felt like I felt in prison, like I have something to prove again. So I wanted to prove Langley right, and I wanted to prove, you know, everyone else wrong.
It was an all-around struggle to accomplish the goal of being a college athlete, to play basketball together, to get our education, to do the things that people in situations like us weren't, you know, able to do. Like, I mean, what person goes to prison, comes home, and goes directly into playing basketball? Well, like, we got in trouble, in serious trouble, did serious prison time. And we came home and we, you know, it was like beating the odds, I guess.
I always tell people the story. We walked around the track when I first met him, and we used to always like daydream about playing college basketball together. And those guys in there used to think we were crazy. We got out and we did it, you know, and we're like heroes now. You know, I talked to a couple people in prison, and they think we're heroes. Like, they think we're real life heroes to them because we give them a chance and give them hope that you can do it. And I always think about that when I take this for granted, or I don't want to get up for practice, when I won't want to do this anymore. You know, I think about Sean and what he sacrificed, and I think about everyone else in prison, and they're not going home. And they don't have this. You know, now it's so weird because now we play on different teams, and you know, it's still cool. You know, we're still close, and shit, it's just me and him. Like, it's just, ain't nothing changed. You know, everyone else makes a big deal about it. You know what I'm saying?
1 to 2 is activate.
No, yeah. Yeah, that's it.
All right.